Hello and welcome to today's weather and wellness chat for Monday, May 19th, 2025. In today's talk, we'll be looking at thunderstorms, allergies, and natural disasters. We don't have control over the weather that's going on around us, but we do have control on how we respond, and we can learn how to mitigate the impact that certain weathers have on our bodies and our minds so that we can remain in as good a balance with our health as we can through all this kind of weather that we experience every day, every week, every season, and so on. Hi, I'm Sheila O'Connor. I'm a health coach and educator. And on this channel, I talk about the current weather and explore how we can use diet and lifestyle and various healing modalities to navigate and stay healthy through different weather and in our body, in our mind, and in our spirit, because different weather can impact all three of those. All three of those they're the trilogy of wellness, and they all work together and influence each other. So we're gonna have a look at that. And I look at different regions, and the idea is that we will be looking at different spots that has weather going on. You can learn from this, and then when you see that weather happening in your location, you'll have an idea of how to deal with that. And if it might be that you get migraines, you get joint issues, brain fog, maybe even some low mood or melancholy. All these different things can come through from different weather patterns. So we're going to look at a little bit each day and what is going on each week. It's not really possible to go through every single thing in total detail. So in these initial videos, we're just going to be getting a flavor of the things we're going to look at and some things to consider. As we go through and develop the channel, there will be specific videos that will be guiding through each situation. Also, if something is really resonating with you, I do have one-on-one clients that I work with specific issues. Maybe it's something to do with sleep you want to work on. Maybe there's some energy issues, concentration, mood, all kinds of stuff. I work with individuals, families as a parent support for children. So you can email me in the details and I can get in touch, that we can talk about a free consultation about how we would work together in that context. So let's go ahead and have a look at the weather. I always start with London because that's where I live. Today, we're also going to look at Oklahoma City and the central region of the United States. And we're also going to look at southern France, across the coast into the mountains in the Alps, even into Italy and Switzerland in that region. So here is our biometeorological forecast for London. Biometeorological means how the weather affects our biology. I always look at that first, and then we look at some other data points. We're still at a 3 solar activity. This is the geomagnetic conditions. So there were solar storms over the weekend, and the sun is pretty active. So that is still triggering the geomagnetic conditions. Here we have the influence of solar activity. So that would be more the UV. So those are what we're getting. It looks similar tomorrow. So let's go ahead and look at the UV. And we're already in the afternoon today. But if we move ahead to tomorrow, that's what I want to do. So this is for tomorrow, for Tuesday. And you can see that right there in the middle of the day, the UV index is going very high. Chance of skin and eye damage, or sun cream is recommended. The rest of the day, it's more low to moderate. So that will be something to pay attention to in London and southern England tomorrow. This is the barometric pressure for London. So I look at the biometeorology, then I look at the barometric pressure, and it looks fine. It's average. There will be a big drop, let's see, between Tuesday morning and Wednesday evening. So it's not too fast. And then if we look at the long-term one, we are here now in high pressure. We're going to move into normal pressure. We're not going to go into low pressure. So even though the pressure's dropping, it's not really going to get into a zone where we would expect symptoms. So when we move into this low range, that would be the range that you would expect to have some symptoms from that. Okay, Oklahoma City has a 4. We have the low pressure coming in as an additional situation, geomagnetic conditions, and solar activity. The low pressure is coming from the storms that are swirling around. And let's have a look at, here is the 10-day forecast. But if we look at just Monday, we have this big warning here. There's a likely risk of severe weather today. Wind, tornadoes, and hail are possible. Have a plan and be prepared. Now, if you live in this area, you will definitely already have a plan. You will be watching the weather. And I'm not a meteorologist, I'm not a weather person, so I'm not going to talk about the origins of weather and understanding weather. I'm just looking at the weather and we're applying that information to our health and wellness. Okay, so that's what we're doing here. So I can't answer a lot of questions about the weather. I can just look at the data that I'm getting from various sites. So that's important to have a look at. So you can see that they're going to get weather, see, all the way. Looks like it's going to clear up. Other places will get more weather and it's going to come back like next week. So when we look at the radar, though, we'll look at some other spots that are going to get this. So here we go. Here's the radar for the US. And if we kind of try to zoom in a little bit, you can see Oklahoma's right here. Now we're looking at this low pressure system. So follow the L as you watch it, and you're going to watch it's going to move from Oklahoma. It's going to go north through Missouri into Iowa and the Quad Cities, and then up around the Chicago area and around there. So watch and you'll see in all those places have this extreme system moving through. So you'll see that on your local weather forecast. So let's go ahead and watch that. It's moving right now. Here it is coming down into Oklahoma Tuesday, and then it's stretching out. It's moving along just that route I was just saying. And so that's going to be moving through that central area of the United States this week. And it stretches out to there's other low pressure pockets along here. So that is what's happening all the way through the week, this big system. And it's an unstable system, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. This is just the weather in Nice in southern France. They have a moderate thunderstorm warning, and that is actually all the way through this region across the whole southern France into the mountains. Those areas also all have thunderstorm warnings this weekend. So the thunderstorms, they develop when warm, moist air rises very quickly. It cools, the condensation creates clouds, and then there's all this instability in the atmosphere. And that's what triggers the lightning, the thunder, the hail, and even tornadoes. And sometimes the faster it rises and the more it develops quickly. That's the point. I'm not going to try to explain it. That's not what we're here for. But you're not always going to see all these storms in the radar because they develop quickly. And that's why when you live in these areas, there's a tornado watch, a tornado warning, meaning it's been cited. So the reason is you can't see it on the radar. They come quickly in the unstable system. And obviously, you're not going to be outside. The first health risk of these storms is getting struck by lightning or getting struck by some flying debris from the wind. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you've taken care of that you are following the temperature and you have the right clothes. So now let's look at other parts of our health and wellness to think about. So we have the headaches and migraines because the pressure is super unstable and can drop very quickly. And usually after the storm, you'll feel better and it'll get a little bit stabilized. There is an increase in pollen and mold spores in the air, which can cause respiratory discomfort, distress, and that's something to pay attention to if you are sensitive to that. We had a sudden thunderstorm here in London last week. Actually, wasn't even in the forecast. It just came so fast. The sky got dark. I think I made a video actually that afternoon. It rained so much. And then the next day, we were noticing allergy symptoms, and the forecast indicated that there was a high amount of mold in the air. And I didn't quite recognize that that was related to the thunderstorm, but all the activity that's happening in the storm stirs everything up, and even to the point that it separates it out, even the pollens, and all that disturbance and commotion of this instability can even get dispersed. They're dispersed, they get broken into smaller pieces. So it can increase mold and allergy sensitivity in the days after the thunderstorm. The other thing you might look for is sleep disruption when their storms are coming during the night, and also stress and anxiety, especially if you're really close to the storm cells as they develop. And finally, it is worth knowing that these storms have a huge impact on the charge of the air in terms of positive and negative. Remember that the cells of our body all work on electricity. There's a negative and positive in charge in that. The systems of our body are running on electrical currents. Actually, the central nervous system, the cardiovascular system, our hormone receptors, all of that requires a complete circuit to be happening between negative and positive. And one of the factors that is involved in that circuit being activated to its best is the ionization in the air. So if you look at my blog on negative ions, it explains that a little bit more. But basically, negative ions are good. You get them at the beach, in waterfalls, forest bathing, even a shower will give you that. Positive ions come into the atmosphere, into the atmosphere of your room through devices, appliances, uh, um, and that adds a lot. So I have this big salt lamp here because we have a lot of devices in this room, computers, TV, we have appliances. It's a small flat, so we keep these around to help absorb the positive ions and keep the circuit in the room flowing. And the same thing happens in the whole region with the thunderstorms. And it's just this buildup of positive ions, which it kind of feels like all the energy is sucked out of the region. And it can really create a lot of low energy, and you can feel pretty depleted when it's like that. So you'll want to pay attention to that being one of the things that can make you feel really off and really low on energy when these big storms are coming through the region. We talked a little bit about headaches and migraines last week with your apple cider vinegar drink, adding vinegar to your diet because it's changing the pH, and that's actually what's throwing you out of balance. So I want to go ahead and move on to talking about allergies. We talked a little bit about thunderstorms and all the different things that can be going on. So with allergies, we have this increased pollen and mold count in the air. And, allergy symptoms, the sinus problems, watery eyes, you can feel itchy. Different people are going to experience this in different ways. Basically, the allergies is a sign that your immune system has been triggered by what is in the environment. So instead of thinking of that as, oh, I better go get my pill, go get my anti-allergy medicine, the antihistamine, let's take a step back and just notice that okay, I have just gotten a sign that my body is reacting to the environment. And it's like a message from your body. Antihistamines, they will resolve the acute situation, but they come at a cost, which could be drowsiness, difficulty concentrating, cardiovascular irregularities, or even digestive upset. And in addition, the depletion of electrolytes and taxation on the liver and kidneys. So that's a pretty big opportunity cost to get rid of some watery eyes. So some things you can do instead to deal with allergies when you get the message that you're having a histamine reaction is one of my top things I like to do is make a cup of nettle tea and add some honey. The honey, actually, the really great thing about a scoop of honey is that honey has properties where it absorbs extra water in the system. So that when it does its job, it will attract the water and excess mucus, excess fluids that are going up in your sinuses and your eyes when that's happening. The other thing is quercetin. You may be familiar with that as a natural support when you're having allergies. Natural sources of quercetin are apples and onions, for example. We made an onion soup last week when we were recognizing all this stuff that was floating out around in the air after the thunderstorm. Also, vitamin C, it's a good time to increase your vitamin C to just help your body deal with this defenses that it needs. Anytime your immune system puts its second layer of defenses up, then vitamin C is going to support that and boost the immune system. Bromelain, which is found in pineapple, is also really supportive of histamines and allergy symptoms. And finally, really look into a low histamine diet. So avoid fermented foods, processed meats, definitely avoid sugar, and also leftovers are a surprising source of additional histamine. So if you are having some kind of a histamine reaction, try to keep the leftovers to 1 day, 2 days max, and eat your food as fresh as it can be, because that will just not um, you don't want to add fuel to what's already happening with this histamine reaction. Pay attention to your symptoms when these thunderstorms are coming through, because whatever you're dealing with could be from the thunderstorm and the weather. It might not be from something else. And if we can deal with it with our diet and our lifestyle, that's so much better because we don't have to have those side effects, right? Again, anywhere you're having these storm systems, the unstable atmospheric pressure, it can cause a heightened alkalinity in the pH of the body, and that can also make you more susceptible. So a lot of this is just putting an extra weight on your immune system. The heightened alkalinity makes you more at risk. Your body is more likely to or more susceptible to bacteria and viruses, and we all want to avoid that. So in that case, stick to like the high acid foods, the citrus. You can use vinegar, add some lemon to your tea, to your water, all that kind of stuff. When it's getting more hot and humid, you definitely want to avoid heavy, greasy foods because that's just going to add to the heaviness of what you're already experiencing. A fresh, crisp salad with a nice tangy vinaigrette will be incredibly restorative. Also, avocados, bananas, sweet potatoes are really good foods for replacing electrolytes. Okay, so you can foods and drinks and supplements, all these things can replace electrolytes, which need to be replaced like all the time. We're not holding on to them, we're constantly using them. And finally, today we're going to talk about natural disasters. Unfortunately, we did see a big impact of destruction and damage from a storm that went through. I think it was over 500 miles that the cell went through, and particularly in Kentucky. And all of those families are dealing with damage and devastation and even loss of life right now. And it's very stressful, and they're likely in shock. And it's a lot to take in. And in this case, once the basic shelter is recovered, there's so many things that can come up. There's a plethora of things that to consider after a natural disaster, including air and water quality and appropriate living conditions, psychological stress and distress and more, not knowing maybe where you're going to live, where the next meal is going to come from, etc. In terms of the broader piece of our health, this is a very depleting situation to go through, and it depletes our reserves. So we need true restoration after a natural disaster. Eating fresh and nutritional meals is super, super important because, as we know, low quality food actually depletes us even more, because ultra processed food has, unfortunately, chemicals in it that it requires even more from our body to deal with. So the freshest food you can get access to after a natural disaster that will nourish you and restore your system is super important. Research shows that micronutrients are really important. We look at macronutrition a lot. Watch your macros, make sure you get enough macros. In the case of a natural disaster, studies show that micronutrition is very important, and that is what are micronutrients? Those are the essential and trace minerals that are required, again, to connect that cellular circuitry and keep all of these systems, the central nervous system, the cardiovascular system, functioning. And that's so important because when you've just been through this terrible, terrible experience, there's a lot to deal with. There's a lot of decisions to make. If you're making decisions for a family, you want your central nervous system and your neural network working, functioning properly so that you are making good decisions and able to support your family. You want your cardiovascular system working so that you can get through the day and night and take care of that things that need to be taken care of, which are beyond what you normally take. So in this case, I would definitely recommend getting a good source of electrolytes. You can get that from, like I said, fresh fruit. Olives and pickles are a really good source of electrolytes that you can add to your food. As I mentioned in the previous section, for potassium, you can get avocado. Bananas and sweet potatoes are also very high and will help restore that. And you can get electrolyte supplements from little tablets or coconut water. And so just add some high nutritional density salt to your food. That's all going to be really good electrolytes for important for your restoration and recovery. That is a little bit about natural disasters. There will be a full video coming on that, and that's our introduction for today. So that's a little bit about what's going on in the weather today. Be well and adjust your food and lifestyle accordingly, and keep an eye on what's going on outside your window. Thanks for checking in. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.